I pushed through the glass doors at the CERN contractor intake building around 7 in the morning, 23rd of the month. Loan payment was due on the 28th. 5 days. The invoice from that rewire job in Lyon was still unpaid. Had been for 6 weeks now, and the client kept saying, next week, next week. I'd stopped believing that around week 3. My boots squeaked on the polished floor. Place smelled like floor cleaner and that specific kind of recycled air you get in admin buildings. I had my folder with the contract paperwork tucked under one arm and my tool belt in the other hand because I wasn't sure if they'd want to inspect it or what. Probably should have asked. Didn't. The payment dates kept cycling through my head. 28th, then rent on the 3rd. Then the utility bill I'd already pushed back twice. I'd done the math too many times. If this contract paid on schedule, 2 weeks of night work inspecting electrical panels in the LHC service tunnels, I could cover the loan and maybe half of rent. The rest I'd figure out. I had to figure it out. Freelance electrical work had been fine for a while. Steady enough. Then it wasn't. Jobs dried up in that way where you don't notice until you're checking your account balance twice a day and your stomach goes tight every time. 3 months of that. This CERN gig was short-term. Maybe they'd extend it, maybe not. Didn't matter. I needed the first paycheck. Default felt close. That's the thing they don't tell you. It's not some distant concept. It's a feeling in your chest. This tightness that sits there while you're brushing your teeth or buying bread. I'd had it for weeks. The intake area had about a dozen people ahead of me. Contractors mostly, I figured. Some had the same look I probably did. Tired. Here for work, not tourism. A couple of them had green site access lanyards already. Old hands. I got in line behind a guy with a Zurich electric patch on his jacket. While I waited, I checked my phone. No messages. The Lyon client hadn't responded to my last email. Figured. I thought about my mother, Sage. She'd asked me last week if I'd heard back about the CERN job, and when I said yes, she'd gone quiet for a second. Then she said, "Your father worked there once, long time ago." That had stopped me. She didn't talk about my father much. He'd died when I was 2. Some kind of accident, she'd always said. Didn't like going into it. Doing what? I'd asked. Service work. Labs, I think. She'd been folding laundry, not looking at me. It was a short contract. Before you were born. Which labs? She'd paused with one of her cardigans half folded. I don't remember, Arlo. It was 30 years ago. Then she'd changed the subject. She did that sometimes. I'd wanted to press, but her face had that look, the one that meant the door was closed. I hadn't thought much of it until now. Standing here probably didn't mean anything. CERN hired a lot of contractors. The line moved up. Zurich electric guy stepped forward to the desk. I didn't know why she'd brought it up at all if she wasn't going to explain. That was the part that stuck. She could have just said congrats, good luck, be safe, but she'd mentioned him, then stopped herself. Anyway, my turn came up. The woman behind the desk had a CERN badge on a blue lanyard and looked like she'd processed 1,000 contractors this month alone. She didn't smile, just held out her hand. Paperwork. I handed over the folder. She flipped through it, checked something on her computer, typed. Didn't ask my name, didn't ask for a single thing beyond what was already on the forms. Passport. I gave it to her. French. She scanned it, handed it back. She printed out a stack of forms and spun them around. Sign each page where it's marked. Initial the safety acknowledgements. I skimmed the first page. Standard liability stuff. Acknowledgement of hazardous work environment. Radiation safety protocol. I initialed. Signed. Kept going. There were maybe 8 pages. My hand started cramping by the end. I'm not great at signing my name that many times in a row. She took the stack back, didn't look at it, just fed the pages into a scanner one by one. Temporary badge. She slid a plastic card across the desk. It had my name, my photo from the application, and a red stripe along the top. Do not lose this. Do not let anyone else use it. If you lose it, there's a 200 franc replacement fee and a 48-hour reissue delay. Got it. Your escort will meet you in Zone B. She pointed past the desk to a hallway with blue floor markings. Follow the blue line. Wait in the glass room at the end. Thanks. She was already looking past me. Next. I clipped the badge to my jacket and followed the blue line. The hallway smelled like concrete and something metallic I couldn't place. Fluorescent lights overhead. My boots echoed. Zone B was a waiting area with glass walls and about 10 plastic chairs. 3 other people were already sitting there. I took a seat near the door and set my tool belt on the floor between my feet. Waited. Nobody talked. One guy was reading something on his phone. Another stared at the wall. That was fine. I didn't need conversation. About 10 minutes later, a man in a high-vis safety jacket came through the far door. Tall, maybe 6 feet. Sandy blonde hair, neat. He had a clipboard in one hand and a badge on a lanyard that said Tyler Johnson, safety engineer. Mercado, he said. Not a question. His accent was Swiss German, calm. Like he'd said my name 1,000 times, and it didn't mean much. I stood up. That's me. Follow me. I grabbed my tool belt and followed him back through the door he'd come from. He moved at a steady pace. Not fast, not slow. Controlled. We passed through a security checkpoint. He scanned his badge. I scanned mine. A light turned green. And then we were in a stairwell heading down. You'll be working night shifts, he said without looking back. 2200 to 0600. Inspecting electrical distribution panels in sectors 3, 4, and 7. Maintenance flagged them for thermal irregularities. You'll document readings, tighten connections, replace any components outside tolerance. Understood. Your work area is restricted. No deviation from assigned routes. No photography. No personal devices below ground. I nodded, even though he wasn't looking. Got it. We reached the bottom of the stairwell and he pushed through a heavy steel door. The air changed. Cooler. Recycled. We were in a tunnel now. Concrete floor, concrete walls, conduit and cable trays running overhead. Lights every few meters. It stretched out in both directions, longer than I could see. I liked it immediately. Strict routes, checklists, fixed tasks, no improvisation. Simple. Tyler kept walking. He pointed as we went. Emergency alcove, every 200 meters. Telephone inside connects directly to surface safety. I looked. Small recess in the wall. Red phone. Fire extinguisher. Ventilation markers. He gestured to a panel with green LEDs. If these go red, you stop work and exit immediately using the nearest stairwell. No exceptions. Understood. We turned left at an intersection. Another tunnel. Same setup. He kept talking. Magnet sector designations, access restrictions, beam status indicators. I listened. Took it in. This was the kind of work I could do. Follow the rules, check the boxes, go home. We passed under a sign that said .8, restricted access. And that's when I saw it. Off to the right, maybe 20 meters down a side passage. A door, steel, old, sealed tight. No signage, no markings. The tunnel around it was newer concrete, clean, but the door itself looked older, different. The stone around the frame didn't match the rest of the wall. I slowed. Tyler kept walking. I looked at the service map posted on the wall near the intersection. Detailed layout, color-coded sectors, emergency routes. The door wasn't on it. Tyler stopped, turned back. Something wrong? No. I kept my voice even, just checking the map. He waited. I walked past the side passage without looking at it again, caught up to him. But I'd seen it. The handle, heavy, mechanical, the kind that locked from the outside. We kept moving. Tyler pointed out another ventilation marker, another alcove. I nodded along, listened, responded when he asked if I understood, but part of my head stayed back at that door, the one that wasn't supposed to be there, the one somebody had decided didn't need a label or a place on the map. That part bugged me a little. I kept walking. Tyler handed me a single sheet of paper at 21:58, 2 minutes before my shift actually started. I'd come down the same stairwell from the morning intake, through the same checkpoint, into the same concrete tunnel that smelled like recycled air and something metallic I couldn't quite place. Tyler was already waiting near the first alcove with his clipboard and the equipment cart that I figured was mine for the night. The cart had a metal frame, 2 shelves, wheels that needed oil, and a bunch of tools I'd packed earlier sitting exactly where I'd left them. He didn't say anything about the handbook. Didn't ask if I'd read the safety manual they'd emailed me 3 days ago. Just held out the paper. "This one matters more," he said. I took it. Single sheet, white, with a CERN asset number printed at the top in small gray text. The kind of number that probably linked to some database I'd never see. Below that, 5 lines. Just 5. I read them standing there under the fluorescent lights, with Tyler watching me and the tunnel stretching out behind him into darkness. Never touch the stone door handle. Keep walking if you hear your name. Hold your breath when the red lights blink twice. Don't record audio underground. Leave any missing tool you didn't lose exactly where it sits. That was it. No explanation. No context. Just 5 rules that didn't sound like safety protocol and didn't match anything in the official handbook I'd skimmed on the train. I read them twice. The second time didn't make them make more sense. "Questions?" Tyler asked. I looked up. His expression hadn't changed. Still calm, still bureaucratic, still holding his clipboard with both hands like it was part of his job description. I had about 12 questions, maybe more. But something in the way he'd handed me the paper, quick, matter of fact, 2 minutes before shift start, told me he wasn't going to answer them. "No," I said. "Good." I folded the paper once and shoved it into my pocket. It felt heavier than it should have. Probably just my imagination. Probably not. Tyler gestured toward the cart. "Sectors 3, 4, and 7. Panels are flagged in the system. Document readings, check connections, replace anything outside tolerance. You know the process." "I know it. Emergency alcoves every 200 meters. Red phone, fire extinguisher. You see a ventilation marker go red, you stop work and exit via nearest stairwell. No exceptions." "Understood." He checked his watch. Exactly 22 ala. "Start with Sector 3. Routes marked on your cart map. I'll be surface side if you need to call up." "Right." Tyler turned and walked back toward the stairwell without saying anything else. His footsteps echoed for a while, then faded, then stopped when the heavy door closed behind him. I was alone. I stood there for maybe 30 seconds, just breathing and looking at the tunnel. It extended in both directions, concrete and conduit and cable trays overhead. Lights every few meters making pools of brightness with shadows between them. The air was cool. Not cold, but enough that I was glad I'd worn the heavier coveralls. The paper sat in my pocket like a stone. I pulled the cart map. Laminated sheet clipped to the top shelf, showing sectors 3 through 7 with colored lines and panel locations marked in red dots. Sector 3 started about 400 meters east, past 2 intersections and under the .8 access sign I'd seen that morning. Past the unmarked door. I checked my tool belt. Flashlight, multimeter, insulated screwdrivers, wire strippers, electrical tape, spare connectors. Everything I'd need. Everything I'd packed myself. I knew what was there. Then I started walking, pushing the cart ahead of me with both hands on the frame. The wheels squeaked a little. The sound bounced off the walls and came back at me from weird angles. I tried to treat it like normal work. Sector 3 had 11 panels flagged for inspection. I found the first one at 2234, mounted on the wall inside a recessed alcove about chest height. Standard distribution panel, gray metal housing, CERN asset tag on the door, thermal scanner bracket attached to the side showing a reading of 48 degrees Celsius. That was higher than it should have been. Acceptable range was 35 to 42 for this model. I opened the panel door and checked the connections with my flashlight. Breaker in position 7 had discoloration around the terminal. Loose connection, probably arcing under load. I killed the breaker, tested it dead with my multimeter, then tightened the terminal screw 3/4 of a turn until it seated properly. The discoloration didn't go away, but the connection was solid now. I logged the reading, the fix, and the time in the inspection sheet clipped to my cart. Then I closed the panel and moved on. Panel 2 was clean. Panel 3 had a bad breaker that I swapped out. Panel 4 was clean. Panel 5 had another loose connection. I kept working, kept logging, kept my head down and my hands busy doing the kind of electrical work I'd done 100 times before, in buildings and substations and rewire jobs across Lyon. It felt almost normal, except for the rules sitting in my pocket. Except for the tunnel being empty and silent, except for my cartwheels and my breathing and the hum of ventilation fans somewhere distant. Except for the fact that I kept waiting for something to happen. Nothing did. I finished Sector 3 at Aura 147 and moved into Sector 4. More panels, more readings, more logging. My back started to ache from bending over the cart to write. My fingers were getting cold even with the work gloves. At 0213, I was between panels 9 and 10 in Sector 4 when the lights changed. The red lights, emergency status indicators mounted every 50 meters along the tunnel ceiling, blinked twice in sequence. I froze. The pattern ran down the line. Blink, blink, pause, then the next light. Blink, blink, pause. Moving away from me toward the east tunnel exit. I held my breath. Didn't think about it. Didn't hesitate. Just stopped breathing mid-inhale and stood there with both hands on my cart and my chest locked tight. The rule had said hold your breath when the red lights blink twice. It hadn't said why. It hadn't said how long. I counted in my head. 1, 2, 3. The blinking pattern continued down the tunnel line, disappearing into the distance where the lights became small dots. Then it stopped. 4, 5, 6. The normal lighting returned. White fluorescence overhead, green LEDs on the ventilation markers, no red at all. 7, 8. I let my breath out slowly through my nose and sucked in new air that tasted exactly the same as before. Nothing had changed. The tunnel looked identical. The cart was still in front of me. My tools were still arranged on the shelves exactly where I'd put them. Except, I looked down. There was a wrench sitting on the bottom shelf of my cart. Adjustable wrench, 10-inch, chrome finish with a rubber grip. Clean. No rust, no wear marks like it had just come out of packaging. I hadn't packed it. I knew I hadn't packed it because I'd brought my own wrenches, a set of 6 in a roll pouch clipped to the left side of my tool belt. And I'd checked them twice before leaving the surface. I didn't need a 10-inch adjustable for panel work. Didn't use them. Didn't like the way they slipped under torque. This one was just sitting there on the shelf between my spare wire nuts and my voltage tester. I stared at it. My first instinct was to pick it up. Check the weight. Check the manufacturer's stamp. See if it had any markings that would tell me where it came from. My second instinct was to throw it off the cart and keep walking. I did neither. The rule had said leave any missing tool you didn't lose exactly where it sits. This wasn't my tool. I hadn't lost it. Someone else had. Or something else had. Or it had appeared from nowhere for reasons I didn't understand and didn't want to think about at 0214 in an empty tunnel 200 meters underground. I left it where it sat. Didn't touch it. Didn't move it. Didn't acknowledge it except to make sure I knew exactly where it was so I wouldn't brush against it by accident. Then I kept going. Panel 10, Panel 11, Sector 4 complete. Move into Sector 7, start the next sequence, check the readings, log the data, tighten the connections, replace the components outside tolerance. Normal work. Except for the wrench, sitting on my cart that I didn't pack and wouldn't touch. I finished the route at 0452, 11 panels in Sector 3, 9 in Sector 4, 14 in Sector 7, 34 total, all inspected, all logged, all documented with readings and fixes and timestamps written in my handwriting on CERN inspection sheets. The wrench stayed on the bottom shelf the entire time. I pushed my cart back toward the stairwell access, past the emergency alcoves and the ventilation markers and the intersections I'd memorized from the map. My shoulders ached. My hands were stiff. My eyes felt dry from staring at panel interiors under flashlight beam for 6 hours. When I reached the access door, I stopped and looked back at the tunnel one more time. It looked exactly the same as when I'd started. Concrete, conduit, lights, shadows. Empty. The wrench sat on my cart shelf where it had appeared, right between the wire nuts and the voltage tester, exactly where I'd left it. I hadn't followed my instinct to fix the problem. I'd followed the rules instead. The tunnel had tested me, probably. Maybe. I didn't know. But I'd passed. I pushed the cart through the door and started climbing the stairs back to surface level, leaving the wrench exactly where it sat. After that shift, I treated the rules like energized conductors. Don't touch. Don't test. Don't second-guess the warning. I kept my eyes off the stone door at point 8. That was the main thing. Every route Tyler assigned me took me past that intersection at least twice per shift, sometimes 4 times if I had to double back for supplies or recheck a panel. The door sat there 20 meters down the side passage, sealed and unlabeled, not appearing on any map I'd seen. I didn't look at it. I walked faster through that stretch, pushed the cart with more momentum, kept my eyes on the conduit overhead or the ventilation markers or the cart map clipped to the handle. Anything but that passage. I figured if the rules said never touch the stone door handle, then looking at it too long probably wasn't smart either. The whole tunnel felt different after that first night. Not dangerous exactly, just aware. I'd worked in plenty of weird places before. Old factories with bad wiring and asbestos dust. Condemned buildings where the floor gave warnings before it gave out. This wasn't that. The tunnel was clean, maintained, professionally monitored. But it had rules that didn't make sense unless you stopped trying to make them make sense. So I did. The wrench stayed on my cart for 3 more shifts. I never touched it, never moved it. On the 4th shift, it was gone. I didn't ask Tyler about it. He didn't mention it either. I finished my assigned sectors, logged my readings, tightened connections, swapped breakers. Standard work. The kind I'd done 100 times before in safer places that paid worse. My hands knew the rhythm. Kill the breaker, test it dead, make the fix, log the time. The loan payment was due in 2 days. I had the money now. First time in 3 months, I wasn't calculating overdraft fees in my head. But I walked faster past point 8 every single time. The next night, around 3 in the morning, I heard my name. I was in Sector 4, finishing Panel 19. Thermal reading was clean, but one of the terminals looked discolored, so I killed the breaker and checked the connection. Loose. I tightened it down, logged the fix, and was reaching for my multimeter when I heard it. Arlo. Just that. My name. Spoken low and clear from somewhere behind me down the tunnel. I didn't turn around. My hand stopped halfway to the multimeter. The voice had a Lion accent. Not generic French. Lion specifically. The vowel sat in the back of the throat, the R's rolled soft. I knew that accent. I'd grown up hearing it from my mother, from neighbors, from the guy who ran the hardware shop 2 blocks from our apartment. This wasn't that. This was closer. Familiar in a way that made my chest tight. I'd heard this voice before, not in person, in recordings. Family videos my mother kept in a shoebox under her bed. footage from before I was born or right after. My father talking to the camera, holding me as a baby, laughing at something off screen. I'd watched those videos maybe 4 times in my whole life. The last time was 6 years ago, after my mother mentioned him during dinner, and then went quiet for the rest of the night. Arlo. Same tone, same cadence, same exact voice. I kept my hands on the panel. Rule 2, keep walking if you hear your name. I wasn't walking right now, I was working, but the principle felt the same. Don't respond, don't engage, don't turn around. I finished tightening the terminal, tested the connection, flipped the breaker back on. My movements were slower than normal, deliberate. I was buying time to think, but I didn't let myself look back. I logged the reading on my inspection sheet, clipped it back to the cart, and started pushing toward the next panel. 40 meters down the tunnel, I kept my eyes forward. The fluorescence overhead buzzed faintly. The ventilation markers glowed green. Normal. Arlo. The voice followed me. Same distance, same volume. I walked faster. The cart wheels rattled over the concrete seams. My breath was loud inside my chest. The voice stayed exactly the same distance behind me, like it was tethered to my pace. I sped up. It didn't get quieter. I slowed down. It didn't get louder. It wasn't coming from behind me. It was inside my head, or inside my helmet, or somewhere in between. I didn't wear a helmet for panel work, just safety glasses and gloves, but the sound had that quality. Close, contained, personal. I reached panel 20 and stopped. My hands were shaking a little. I set them on the cart handle and waited. The voice didn't call again. The tunnel was silent except for the ventilation hum and the distant electric buzz from the main lines overhead. I counted to 30. Nothing. I opened panel 20, checked the breaker array, logged the readings. Clean. No issues. I moved to panel 21. Still nothing. The voice was gone. I finished Sector 4, moved into Sector 7, completed the route. My shoulders didn't relax until I was back at the stairwell access, pushing the cart through the door and climbing toward the surface. I didn't tell Tyler. I didn't know what I'd say. I heard my dead father's voice and it followed me for 2 minutes, then stopped. That sounded insane. Or like a safety concern. Either way, I'd probably get pulled off the contract. I needed the money. Rent was due in 8 days, so I kept it to myself. The following night, Tyler assigned me to work with a rigger, Jimmy Castro. We were swapping a coil component in an alcove near Point 8. Jimmy met me at the bottom of the stairwell at 22 Sao, carrying a rigging harness and a canvas tool bag. He was maybe 29, built solid, with dark curly hair and a loud voice that echoed off the concrete. He grinned when he saw me. "Mercado, yeah?" he said. "Tyler said you're the panel guy." "That's right," I said. "I'm on coils tonight. They want us to pull a thermal sensor module and swap in a replacement. Should take maybe 2 hours if the mount bolts aren't seized." I nodded. I'd done coil work before. Not my specialty, but I knew the process. Jimmy pulled a folded piece of paper from his jacket pocket. Same paper Tyler had given me on my first night. 5 rules. He waved it at me. "You get one of these?" he asked. "Yeah." "It's bullshit, right?" He laughed. "Never touch the stone door. Don't record audio. Hold your breath when the lights blink." "What is this? A ghost tour?" I didn't answer. I started pushing my cart toward the alcove. Jimmy followed, still talking. "I've been on 3 CERN contracts," he said. "Never seen rules like this. Usually it's just lock out, tag out, don't touch the beamline, report spills. This is different. Tyler wouldn't explain it either. Just handed me the paper and said follow it exactly. We reached the alcove. The coil assembly was mounted in a recessed panel about chest height, with cooling lines running to a thermal regulation unit overhead. The sensor module was a cylindrical component the size of a soup can. bolted into the coil housing with 4 hex screws. Jimmy set his bag down and pulled out a socket wrench. I positioned my cart and checked the electrical shutoff. The coil was already de-energized. Good. We got to work. Jimmy kept talking while he loosened the mount bolts. "You believe any of this?" he asked. "The rules, I mean." "I follow them," I said. "Yeah, but do you believe them?" I handed him the replacement sensor module. "Doesn't matter." He grinned. "That's a yes." "It's a no comment." "Same thing." He pulled the old module free and inspected the mount points. "I'll tell you what I think. I think it's a psych thing. They want to see who follows orders and who asks questions. Contractors who follow the rules get kept on. Contractors who don't get cycled out." I didn't respond. I was watching the tunnel behind us. We were maybe 30 meters from the Point 8 intersection. I could see the passage from here. The stone door sat in shadow, barely visible. Jimmy installed the new module and started threading the first bolt. "If I hear my name," he said, "I'm answering, just to prove it's nothing." My hand stopped. I looked at him. "Don't," I said. He glanced up. "What?" "Don't answer it." "Why not?" "Because the rule says don't." Jimmy laughed. "Come on. You really think something's going to happen if I say hello to a voice?" "I don't know," I said, "but I'm not testing it." He shook his head and went back to the bolts. "That's the difference between us, man. You follow rules. I figure out why they exist." I wanted to tell him about the wrench, about the voice, about the way the tunnel felt when you stopped treating it like a normal worksite. But we were underground, in an alcove, 30 meters from a door I wasn't supposed to look at. This wasn't the place. "Just follow the list," I said. "Sure," Jimmy said. He didn't sound sure. We finished the coil swap at 0134. Jimmy tested the new sensor, logged the readings, packed his tools. We walked back to the stairwell together. He was still talking, making jokes about the rules, about Tyler's clipboard, about the way the tunnel smelled like old metal and recycled air. I barely listened. When we reached the surface, I found Tyler in the access corridor, reviewing paperwork on his clipboard. Jimmy headed past him toward the locker area without stopping. I waited until he was out of earshot. "Tyler," I said. He looked up from the clipboard. "Mercado. Coil swap complete?" "Yeah, logged and tested." I paused. "Jimmy said he's going to answer if he hears his name." Tyler's expression didn't change. He made a notation on his paperwork, then looked back at me. "Did he?" he said. Not a question. He thinks the rules are a test. He wants to prove they don't matter. Tyler clicked his pen twice. Slow. Deliberate. His eyes were somewhere past my shoulder, focused on nothing I could see. "Jimmy won't be on the schedule much longer," he said. I waited for more. An explanation. A plan. Something that sounded like normal safety protocol. Tyler just kept looking past me, his face calm, his tone flat. "You're pulling him off the contract?" I asked. "I'm adjusting assignments," Tyler said. "He'll be reassigned to surface work by the end of the week. Because he's going to break the rules. Because the work requirements are changing." Tyler's eyes came back to me. "You don't need to manage this, Mercado. It's handled." "Handled how?" Tyler closed his clipboard. "The tunnel has its own way of sorting people. Contractors who follow procedure stay. Contractors who don't get moved to other projects. That's how it works." The way he said it made my stomach tight. Like Jimmy wasn't going to get reassigned by paperwork. Like something else was going to make the decision. "That's not a safety protocol," I said. "No," Tyler agreed. "It's not." He turned and walked toward the stairwell exit, leaving me standing in the corridor with my tool belt still on and my hands still smelling like electrical grease. I watched him go. His boots made even sounds on the concrete. Professional, controlled, completely detached from the fact that he'd just told me the tunnel would handle Jimmy Castro on its own. I stood there for another minute trying to figure out what I was supposed to do with that information. Report it to someone higher up. Warn Jimmy again. Refuse the next shift. But I had rent due in 6 days. And Tyler was right about one thing. This wasn't a safety issue I could manage normally. Tyler sent a message at 21:15 saying the beam was down for scheduled maintenance work and my shift would proceed as normal. I descended the stairwell at 21:52 with my tool belt already on and my temporary badge clipped to my jacket. The checkpoint scanner blinked green. The tunnel air hit me the same way it always did. Cool, recycled, smelling faintly of concrete and machine oil. The cart waited at the first alcove with my inspection sheets already clipped to the handle. I checked the contents. Flashlight, multimeter, insulated screwdrivers, wire strippers, electrical tape, spare connectors. Everything matched my usual setup. No wrench had appeared this time. I pulled the laminated map from the side pocket and confirmed my route. Sectors 3, 4, and 7 again. Standard panel work. I started pushing the cart east at exactly 22 and the tunnel felt different with the beam down. Quieter, probably. Or maybe just emptier in a way I couldn't name. The fluorescent lights overhead stayed white and steady. The ventilation markers blinked their normal green. My cart wheels echoed off concrete the same way they had for 2 weeks. But something about knowing the accelerator wasn't running made the whole space feel smaller. More like a basement. Less like the edge of something I didn't understand. I passed through Sector 3 without incident. Panel 1 had a thermal reading of 39 degrees, acceptable range. Panel 2 was clean. Panel 3 needed a terminal tightened. I logged each reading and kept moving. Sector 4 started at 2341. I worked through panels 6, 7, and 8. All routine. My hands moved through the checks automatically by now. Kill the breaker, test it dead, inspect connections, log the reading, move on. At 0:53, I pushed my cart past point 8. I kept my eyes on the conduit overhead the way I'd trained myself to do. I didn't look down the side passage. I didn't check if the stone door was still there. I just kept the cart moving and focused on the cable trays running along the ceiling and the next panel location marked on my map. Then I saw the copper punch sitting on the floor directly under the steel door frame. I stopped walking. My hands stayed on the cart handle. The punch sat maybe 15 centimeters from the threshold, right where someone would step if they were exiting through that door. It was a standard center punch. Copper body, knurled grip, steel tip, maybe 12 centimeters long. The kind you use to mark metal before drilling. I owned 2 myself in my main kit at home. But this one had a white CERN asset tag wrapped around the grip. I could read the date from where I stood. 1984. Rule 5 said, leave any missing tool you didn't lose exactly where it sits. I remembered the wrench that had appeared on my cart. I'd left it alone and it had disappeared 3 shifts later without explanation. That was the correct response. That was how you pass the test. But the punch was blocking the walkway. Not entirely, but enough that someone pushing a cart or carrying equipment would need to step around it or risk kicking it accidentally. It was a tripping hazard, a safety issue. I looked down the tunnel in both directions, empty. No footsteps, no voices, no movement except the green LEDs on the ventilation markers. I moved my right boot forward and nudged the punch with the steel toe, just enough to push it toward the wall and out of the center path. It rolled maybe 20 centimeters and stopped with the asset tag facing directly up toward the ceiling lights. The white tag had been filled out in blue ballpoint pen. CERN inventory number. Date issued 04/11/1984. Assigned location, Point 8 Service Gallery. Below that, someone had written a second line in different handwriting. Thinner pen, recovered surface 1911-1984. 15 days later. I stared at the tag for maybe 5 seconds. Then I pulled my eyes away, gripped my cart handle and kept walking toward panel 9. My heart rate stayed elevated for the next 3 panels. I worked slower than usual. Panel 9 took me 11 minutes when it should have taken 6. Panel 10 was clean, but I rechecked every connection twice anyway. Panel 11 had a loose neutral that I tightened, logged, and moved past. At 01:47, I was positioned between panels 11 and 12, maybe 60 meters east of point 8, when the red emergency lights blinked twice. I held my breath immediately. The blink pattern started at the western end of the tunnel behind me and moved east in sequence. I counted the pulses. 1, 2. Then the lights should have returned to normal white fluorescence. They didn't. The red lights blinked a 3rd time, then a 4th. My lungs started burning around pulse 6. I kept my mouth closed and my chest still. The air in my lungs felt hot and stale. My body wanted to exhale. I forced it to wait. Pulse 8. Pulse 9. My vision started narrowing at the edges, not blacking out, just tightening. My throat felt thick. I gripped the cart handle harder to keep my hands occupied and away from my mouth. Pulse 12. My chest was trying to force the exhale on its own. I clenched my jaw and focused on the ventilation marker directly in front of me. Green LED. Still green. No red status indicator. Just the emergency lights cycling. Pulse 15. I thought about Jimmy and wondered if he'd answered when he heard his name yet. I thought about my rent due in 3 days. I thought about the punch sitting under the stone door with its tag facing up and the second line of handwriting that said, "Recovered surface." Pulse 18. The lights stopped blinking and returned to normal white. I let my breath out slowly through my nose and immediately pulled in new air. My hands were shaking. I counted to 10, then checked my multimeter even though I hadn't been using it. The reading was normal. Everything was normal. I looked back down the tunnel toward point 8. The passage was empty. The stone door was invisible from this angle. The punch was still there under the frame, probably. I didn't walk back to check. I finished panels 12 through 14 with hands that moved slower than they should have. My logging was still accurate, but my handwriting looked worse. I completed Sector 7 at 04:38, pushed my cart back to the stairwell access, scanned my badge, and climbed to surface level without looking behind me. The surface cafeteria opened at 06 hour for early shift workers. I bought coffee from the machine near the entrance. €1.50 in coins, black, no sugar, and sat at a table near the back wall. My tool belt sat on the floor between my feet. My temporary badge was still clipped to my jacket. I'd seen Charlotte Alexander twice before in the main building hallways. She wore a CERN fleece over dark trousers and thin rectangular glasses. Her badge had a blue stripe instead of red, which meant permanent staff. I knew she worked in cryogenics because I'd overheard her talking to another physicist about magnet temperature stability in Sector 8 during my second week. She entered the cafeteria at 06:23 carrying a tablet and a thermos. She bought nothing from the machine. She sat 3 tables away from me near the window. I stood, picked up my coffee, and walked over. "Dr. Alexander?" She looked up. Her eyes went to my badge first, then my face. "Yes?" "Arlo Mercado, electrical contractor, night maintenance." "I know." She set her tablet down but didn't gesture to the empty chair. "Do you need something?" I sat anyway. "I have a question about point 8. Her expression didn't change, but her hands stopped moving. "Point 8 is a magnet junction. If you're having access issues, you need to speak with Tyler Johnson. Not about access, about the sealed gallery." She was quiet for 3 seconds. Then she said, "That's not part of active infrastructure." "I know. That's why I'm asking you instead of Tyler." She picked up her thermos but didn't open it. "What's your question?" "I found a tool near the door. Copper punch. CERN tag from 1984. It said recovered surface. What does that mean?" Charlotte looked past me toward the cafeteria entrance, then back. "You didn't touch it." "I moved it. It was blocking the walkway." "How far?" "Maybe 20 centimeters. Toward the wall." She exhaled slowly through her nose. The maps were redrawn in 1985. The corridor behind that door used to be marked as Point 8 Service Gallery. It was sealed and removed from official documentation after an incident in November '84. I waited. She didn't continue. What kind of incident? Charlotte opened her thermos and poured something that smelled like tea into the cap. A night maintenance worker entered the gallery during a scheduled shutdown. He came back 14 hours later. Medical eval showed no physical injury. Psych eval showed acute auditory fixation. Meaning what? He said he could hear something in the walls. He couldn't stop listening to it. Couldn't focus on anything else. Couldn't sleep. She drank from the cap. Recordings never captured it. They ran full diagnostics. Acoustic sensors, electromagnetic interference, structural resonance, nothing. So they sealed it. They reclassified it, removed it from active infrastructure and updated the tunnel maps. The door was mechanically locked from the outside and the access codes were deleted. She set the cap down. The worker was transferred to surface duties and resigned 4 months later. I thought about the 18 blinks, the punch with 2 dates on its tag, the voice that had called my name in my father's accent. And the unofficial practices? I said. Charlotte's eyes narrowed slightly behind her glasses. Excuse me? The rule sheet. Tyler handed it to me on my first night. 5 rules. No written policy, no safety manual reference. Just a piece of paper with an asset number. She didn't answer immediately. When she did, her voice was quieter. Some situations create their own protective protocols. The kind that work but can't be explained in official documentation. Because they don't make sense. Because they work, she corrected. And when something works consistently in an environment this complex, you don't change it just because you can't model it. I finished my coffee. It was cold by now. What happened to the tools he brought down? They were recovered over the following 6 weeks. Always near the door. Always with the original asset tags. Charlotte closed her thermos. You should follow the rules exactly as written, Monsieur Mercado. Don't improvise. Don't test them. They exist for a reason, even if the reason isn't documented. She stood, picked up her tablet and thermos, and walked toward the cafeteria exit without looking back. I sat alone at the table with my empty coffee cup and my tool belt on the floor, and the knowledge that the tunnel had rules older than the maps. I was standing at panel 14 in Sector 7 when Jimmy answered. I didn't hear the voice call him. Didn't know it happened until I felt it. Something went through my spine like a cable had snapped under tension and whipped straight through the center of my back. Not pain exactly. More like the shape of pain, the space it would take up if it arrived a second later. The lights didn't blink. They stretched. I'm not great at describing this part, but the fluorescent fixtures overhead started smearing along the ceiling like someone was dragging them east while they stayed bolted in place. The light itself pulled into streaks. I could still see the tunnel, the cart, my hands on the multimeter, but everything had this trail behind it, this visual echo that shouldn't exist in still air with no motion. My radio hissed. Jimmy's voice came through. Yeah, I'm here. Then it came through again. Same words. Same timing. But layered underneath the first transmission was another voice that matched my cadence exactly. My rhythm. The way I drop consonants at the end of questions when I'm tired. It was my voice saying Jimmy's words in Jimmy's tone. And the overlap made this phasing sound that sat wrong in my ear, like 2 recordings playing a quarter second out of sync. I dropped the multimeter back into the cart and started running. Panel 14 was about 50 meters west of where I'd left Jimmy working on a cable tray mount near panel 12. 50 meters doesn't sound far. It's the length of half a football pitch, maybe 15 seconds at a full sprint on flat ground. In the tunnel with a tool belt bouncing against my hip and boots hitting concrete and my breath already coming short from whatever the hell just happened to my spine, it felt longer. I didn't call out. Didn't use the radio, just ran. Jimmy was standing in the middle of the walkway with his back to me, facing the western tunnel direction. His shoulders were square and his head was tilted slightly left, like he was listening to something I couldn't hear. His hands hung loose at his sides. The cable tray he'd been working on was still open above him, tools scattered on the ground near his boots. I grabbed his harness with both hands and pulled. He didn't move at first, just stood there. Then his weight shifted backward, and I dragged him toward the eastern access ladder, the one marked on the cart map as secondary egress, approximately 40 meters ahead. His weight was wrong. I'm not a big guy, 5'11", 75 kilos, but I've pulled heavier loads on job sites, and Jimmy wasn't much bigger than me. Should have been able to move him steadily once I had momentum. Instead, his weight increased in jerks, like I was dragging him through water that kept thickening every few steps. Pull, move 2 meters, hit resistance. Pull harder, move another meter, hit more resistance. He wasn't fighting me, wasn't bracing his legs or pulling back. His boots dragged along the concrete and his body stayed limp in my grip, but something else was resisting. The red emergency light started blinking. 2 pulses, just 2. I held my breath on the first blink and shoved Jimmy's head down with my forearm across the back of his skull, forcing his face toward the ground so he couldn't turn west toward point 8. He was heavier than he should be, and my arm wasn't strong enough to hold him and pull him at the same time, so I wrapped my other arm under his chest and dragged him forward in this stumbling crouch while counting in my head. 1, 2. The lights stopped. Jimmy went completely limp. His full weight dropped into my arms and I nearly fell, catching myself with one knee on the concrete while his harness straps dug into my forearms. Then he sucked in this huge breath, louder than it needed to be, like he'd been underwater for 30 seconds and just broke the surface. He started breathing normally after that, fast, shallow breaths that evened out over maybe 10 seconds. I let go and stepped back. Jimmy stayed on his knees for a moment, then sat back on his heels and looked around the tunnel like he'd just woken up in a place he didn't recognize. His face was pale. Not shock pale, just drained. "What happened?" he said. I didn't answer right away. My hands were shaking and I still had that cable snap feeling in my spine. Duller now, but present. "You answered," I said. He blinked. "Answered what?" "You heard your name. You answered it." Jimmy looked down at his hands, turned them over, checked his palms. "I don't remember that." "You said, 'Yeah, I'm here.'" He shook his head slowly. "I was working on the tray. Then I was here." I believed him. That's the thing that bugged me most. He wasn't lying or pretending. There was just this blank gap in his memory where the last 2 minutes should have been. I helped him stand. His weight was normal again. He picked up his tools without talking and we walked to the eastern access ladder together, climbed to surface level, and went to the locker room in silence. Tyler was waiting in the locker room when we came up, not near the lockers or the benches, just standing in the center of the room with his clipboard under one arm and his badge lanyard hanging loose over his high-vis jacket. He looked at Jimmy first, then at me. "Sit down," Tyler said. Jimmy sat on the bench near his locker. I stayed standing. Tyler walked over to the water dispenser in the corner, filled a paper cup, brought it back to Jimmy. Jimmy took it, but didn't drink. "You just watched a correction," Tyler said. He wasn't talking to Jimmy. He was talking to me. I waited. "The rules aren't superstition," Tyler continued. "They're not psychological screening or compliance tests. They're operational limits. When someone crosses one, the tunnel corrects it." "Corrects how?" I said. Tyler glanced at Jimmy, who was staring into the water cup. "Depends on how far the violation goes. Sometimes it's a gap. Memory loss, a few minutes erased. Sometimes it's worse." "What's worse?" "People who don't come back the same. Auditory fixation like the 1984 case. Spatial disorientation. One contractor in 1997 couldn't stop walking in circles for 3 days. Tyler shifted his weight. Jimmy got lucky. You pulled him out before it finished. Jimmy looked up. Before what finished? Tyler didn't answer him. He kept looking at me. I said, "What the hell is down there?" "The stone door isn't a normal door," Tyler said. His tone stayed calm, procedural, like he was explaining ventilation protocols. "It's a cap. There's a pressure point below it. We don't have another word for it. The collider's magnetic cycles keep what's underneath from sinking with the tunnel infrastructure and using it as a path." "A path to where?" "Surface, the labs, anywhere the power grid connects." Tyler set his clipboard on the bench. "When the beam is down, the cycles stop. The pressure increases. That's why night work is restricted, and why the rules matter more during shutdowns." I looked at Jimmy. He was still holding the water cup, not drinking. "The rules contain it," Tyler said. "As long as people follow them, the cap holds and the tunnel stays stable. When someone breaks a rule, the system corrects." "The tunnel corrects," I said. "Yes. Not you. Not CERN safety. The tunnel itself." Tyler nodded once. I felt that cable snap feeling again, fainter now, like an echo in my lower back. "I'm quitting," I said. "Effective immediately." Tyler picked up his clipboard. "You were hired fast. Minimal screening, short interview, contract approved in under a week. You wondered why." I had wondered. I didn't say anything. "Your father was on the night crew that wrote the first rules after the 1984 incident," Tyler said. "He was part of the team that documented what happened when the original service gallery was sealed. The rules work best when someone from that bloodline carries them." I stared at him. "Whatever presses against the cap recognizes the difference," Tyler continued. "We don't know why, but contractors with family connections to the original crew last longer and have fewer correction events. The tunnel responds to them differently." "My father's dead," I said. "I know. That's in your file. You hired me because of my blood. I hired you because the work needs someone who can hold the rules under pressure. Your father could. You can." Tyler clipped his pen to the clipboard. "You're not quitting." "Yeah, I am." Tyler reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out my temporary badge. Not a replacement. Mine. The one I'd scanned at the checkpoint 90 minutes ago. The one that should still be clipped to my jacket. I checked my chest. The badge was gone. Tyler set it on the bench between us. "Your access is still active. Next shift starts at 2200 tomorrow." I didn't pick up the badge. Tyler left through the main door. Jimmy stayed on the bench, still holding the water cup. I grabbed my jacket from the locker, pulled it on, and walked out into the hallway without the badge. The hallway was empty. Fluorescent lights, concrete walls, blue floor line leading back toward the exit. I made it about 10 meters before the speaker mounted near the ceiling clicked once. Not static, not a voice, just a single click, clean and deliberate, like something switching on and then back off. I stopped walking. The speaker didn't click again. The hallway stayed quiet. It wasn't a choice. That's what the click meant. It was an acknowledgement. The tunnel knew I was coming back, and it was just confirming we both understood. I kept walking toward the exit with my badge still sitting on the bench behind me and my tool belt pulling against my shoulder and that click sitting in my ear like a second heartbeat. I couldn't stop counting. By Friday, I started seeing the prep work. I came down the stairwell at 21:45 and the checkpoint scanner blinked green like always. But past the steel door in the alcove where Tyler usually left my cart, there were 3 technicians in white cleanroom coveralls standing around a laptop mounted on a rolling workstation. They had diagnostic cables running to a junction box I'd inspected 2 nights before. One of them was reading numbers off the screen while another wrote on a clipboard. The third guy was just watching the ventilation marker overhead, which blinked green in its normal rhythm. My cart was shoved against the wall behind them with my inspection sheets already clipped to the handle. I walked past without saying anything and grabbed the cart. None of them looked up. The tunnel felt different. Not quieter, exactly. More like it was waiting for something to happen. The fluorescent lights were the same white. The ventilation markers still blinked green, but there was a hum underneath everything that I hadn't noticed before. Low frequency, probably around 60 hertz, which meant it was coming from the magnet systems warming up. I pushed the cart east and started my route in Sector 3. Panel 1 was clean. Panel 2 needed a terminal check. I killed the breaker, tested it dead, tightened the connection, logged it. Standard work. But my hands felt heavier than usual, and I kept glancing back toward the alcove where the technicians were still clustered around their laptop. At Panel 4, I saw more of them. 2 guys in blue CERN jumpsuits were mounting what looked like a thermal sensor array to the wall near an emergency alcove. They had a tablet between them showing some kind of real-time graph with multiple colored lines that spiked and dropped in patterns I didn't recognize. One of them noticed me watching and turned the tablet screen away. I kept moving. By the time I finished Sector 3, it was 0112, and I'd counted 7 people underground. That was more than I'd ever seen on a night shift. Usually it was just me, maybe one other contractor somewhere in a different sector, and Tyler doing his rounds. Tonight felt like they were staging something. I pushed my cart toward Sector 4 and passed 2 more technicians near Panel 8. They were running a fiber optic line along the conduit overhead, feeding it through cable trays toward the west end of the tunnel, toward Point 8. That's when I knew. They were prepping a test ramp, getting ready to cycle the beam and bring the magnets online under controlled load to verify the shutdown repairs were stable. I kept working. Panel 9 was clean. Panel 10 had a loose neutral that I tightened and logged. Panel 11 needed a breaker swap. I pulled the old one, tested the replacement, seated it, closed the panel cover. My chest felt tight and my hands were shaking a little, but I finished the work and moved on. At 0205, I saw Tyler. He was standing near the alcove at the boundary between Sectors 4 and 7, about 40 meters east of Point 8. He had his clipboard under one arm and his badge lanyard hanging over his high-vis jacket. When I got close enough, he stepped into the walkway, so I had to stop the cart. "Mercado," he said. I didn't say anything. Tyler glanced at the nearest ventilation marker, then back at me. "You've seen the prep crew?" "Yeah. Beam cycles tomorrow night. 2,300 hours. Controlled ramp to 40% load, hold for 6 minutes, ramp down. Standard post-maintenance verification." I kept my hands on the cart handle. "Okay." Tyler's expression didn't change. "There's a hard clock on this. If the beam cycles while the stone gallery is active, the cap could slip." "Active," I said. "Pressure builds during shutdowns. You know that. We've been down for 9 days. The cycle resets it. Magnet fields stabilize the infrastructure, prevent sink paths from forming. But if something underneath is already pushing when we ramp up, the transition could create a gap." I looked past him toward Point 8. From this angle, I couldn't see the side passage, just the intersection marker on the wall. "Gap," I said. Tyler shifted his clipboard to his other arm. "The door stays sealed as long as the pressure stays directional, one way. But if the beam cycles while there's an active attempt to breach, the magnetic shift could reverse the flow for approximately 3 to 8 seconds. That's enough." "Enough for what?" "Enough for whatever's underneath to use the grid as a path. To surface, to the labs, anywhere the power connects." He paused. "Your father's crew documented this in the original incident report. November 19th, 1984. They tried to cycle the beam 6 hours after sealing the gallery. The door opened by itself, and a maintenance worker named Alain Roche walked into the corridor and didn't come back for 2 days. When he did, he looked the same, but couldn't remember his own name. Kept asking where the stairs were even when he was standing right next to them. I didn't say anything. Tyler looked at me for a long moment. "If you quit now, we'll pull someone else. Probably a contractor from Zurich who's been here 3 weeks and has never seen the rules. He won't know what to watch for. He won't understand the timing. So you're saying I can't leave? I'm saying quitting won't remove the risk. It'll just leave the tunnel to someone who doesn't understand how the cap works. I looked down at my cart. At the inspection sheets clipped to the handle, the flashlight sitting in the tool tray, the multimeter I'd been using for 6 hours a night for 2 weeks. Tyler stepped back out of the walkway. Your shift ends at 0600. Tomorrow you're scheduled for 22 to 06 again. Beam ramp is at 2300, so you'll be underground when it happens. He walked past me toward the western access stairs without waiting for a response. I stood there for maybe 30 seconds, then pushed my cart toward panel 12. I brought my phone. Saturday night, 21:53. I descended the stairwell with my tool belt over one shoulder and my phone in my jacket pocket. It was an older model, maybe 4 years old, with a cracked screen protector and decent battery life. I'd charged it to 100% before leaving my apartment. The checkpoint scanner blinked green. I walked through the steel door into the tunnel and the prep crew was gone. No technicians, no laptop workstations, no guys in clean room coveralls. Just my cart sitting in the alcove with inspection sheets already attached. I pulled the phone out of my pocket, opened the voice recorder app, and hit the red circle to start recording. The timer started counting up from 0001. I opened my toolbox, a red metal case I kept bungee corded to the bottom shelf of the cart, and set the phone inside on top of the spare wire nuts and electrical tape. Then I pulled a roll of duct tape from my belt and tore off 2 strips. I taped the phone to the inside lid of the toolbox so the microphone faced outward, then closed the lid most of the way, leaving about a 2-centimeter gap so sound could get in. Rule 4, don't record audio underground. I was breaking it on purpose. If something happened tonight, if the cap slipped, if the door opened, if I didn't come back, there needed to be evidence. Something that could outlast me. Something Tyler couldn't bury in a file marked .8 service gallery and removed from official documentation. I checked my watch. 21:58. I started pushing the cart east. Sector 3 was quiet. I worked through panels 1, 2, 3, and 4 without seeing anyone. The hum I'd noticed last night was louder now, a steady 60 hertz vibration that I could feel in the cart handle and the floor under my boots. The magnet systems were online and building charge. Panel 5 needed a breaker replacement. I killed the circuit, tested it dead, swapped the component, closed the panel. My hands were steady, but my heart rate was up. I kept glancing at my watch. 22:34. I finished Sector 3 and moved into Sector 4. Panels 6 and 7 were clean. Panel 8 had a loose connection that I tightened and logged. At Panel 9, I stopped and opened my toolbox to grab the spare voltage tester. The phone was still recording. The timer read 004312, 43 minutes, 12 seconds. I closed the toolbox and kept working. At 2300 hours exactly, the hum changed. It didn't get louder. It shifted. The frequency dropped maybe 5 or 10 hertz, and the vibration in the floor became a pulse instead of a steady pressure. I could feel it in my teeth. The beam was ramping. I looked down the tunnel toward .8, which was about 30 meters west of my position. The intersection marker was visible, but the side passage was angled wrong for me to see the stone door from here. I kept working. Panel 10 was clean. Panel 11 needed a terminal check. I killed the breaker, tested it, tightened the screw, logged it. The pulse in the floor got stronger. 2304. I closed Panel 11 and pushed my cart toward Panel 12, which put me at the edge of Sector 4, approximately 20 meters east of .8. At 2313, the red lights blinked twice. I held my breath. The blink pattern started at the western end and moved east in sequence, passing over my position in 2 pulses. I kept my mouth closed and my chest still, counting in my head. 1, 2. The lights stopped blinking and returned to white. I exhaled slowly through my nose. Then I heard it. From inside the toolbox, muffled by the metal lid and duct tape, a voice. My father's voice. Same lion accent. Same tone I'd heard in the family videos my mother kept in a box under her bed. But this time it wasn't calling my name. It was reciting the rules. "Keep walking if you hear your name," the voice said. "Don't record audio underground. Never touch the stone door handle. Hold your breath when red lights blink twice. Leave any missing tool you didn't lose exactly where it sits. Wrong order." The rules on Tyler's paper went: never touch the handle, keep walking, hold your breath, don't record audio, leave the tool. But the voice was saying them jumbled, like someone who'd memorized the words but didn't understand the structure. Like a bad imitation. I opened the toolbox. The phone was still recording. Timer at 01:02:47. The voice kept playing from the speaker, quiet but clear, reciting the rules over and over in the wrong sequence. I grabbed the phone, ripped the duct tape off, and shoved it back in my jacket pocket without stopping the recording. Then I turned west and started walking toward point 8. I left my cart next to panel 12. Didn't bring my flashlight. Didn't bring tools. Just walked. The tunnel felt smaller. The fluorescent lights stretched overhead in a line that seemed to curve, even though I knew the corridor was straight. The 60 hertz pulse was stronger now, coming up through the concrete in waves that made my boots vibrate with each step. I reached the intersection and turned right into the side passage. The stone door was 20 meters ahead. It looked the same as always. Heavy steel with old stone around the frame. Mechanical handle that locked from the outside, no label or marking. But now I could see the copper punch on the floor near the threshold, right where I'd nudged it 6 nights ago. It was sitting in the same spot, asset tag facing up, date still reading 04/11/1984. I walked toward the door. At 10 meters, the handle turned. Not fast, just a slow rotation, maybe 5 degrees, like someone on the other side was testing the latch. I stopped walking. The handle turned another 10 degrees. Then it stopped. The pressure hit me. Not physical. Not like air or wind. More like weight pressing against my chest and face, pushing backward even though I was standing still. It felt directional, coming from the door, building in waves that matched the 60 hertz pulse in the floor. I took another step forward. The handle turned all the way. 90 degrees, full rotation. The latch clicked open. I dropped to one knee, grabbed the copper punch, and lunged at the door frame. The punch was cold in my hand. I jammed it into the gap between the latch mechanism and the steel frame, wedging the tip into the bolt channel so the door couldn't swing open. The latch pressed against the punch, and I felt resistance, metal against metal, holding. Then the punch started heating up. Not warm, hot. The knurled grip burned through my glove in about 3 seconds, and I had to let go. I switched to my left hand, grabbed the punch closer to the tip where it was still cool, and shoved it deeper into the latch. The metal heated again, faster this time, and I switched grip points, holding it near the asset tag. The tag started smoking. I kept bracing. The pressure behind the door got stronger. I could feel it pushing against the steel, not random, not dispersed. It was shaping itself, mapping contours. I looked at the door surface and saw my silhouette pressed into the metal from the inside, like something was tracing my outline through the frame, learning my dimensions so it could take my place. The magnet hum got louder. I didn't let go of the punch. My left glove burned through, and I switched hands again, grabbing the punch at the very end near the tip, even though the metal was hot enough now that I could smell burning skin. I kept it wedged in the latch, leaning my weight against it, while the pressure on the other side built and built and the silhouette on the door got sharper, more defined, until I could see the outline of my shoulders and the angle of my head and the exact shape of my hands holding the punch in place. Then the hum steadied. The 60 hertz pulse evened out, became constant again instead of waves. The pressure behind the door dropped all at once, like something had been cut off at the source. The door settled, not slammed. Just a hard, final movement like it was sealing itself shut from the inside. The latch mechanism clicked twice, and the handle rotated back to its locked position. I let go of the punch. It stayed wedged in the frame, glowing dull red near the tip with the asset tag burned black and illegible. My hands were shaking and both gloves had holes burned through the palms. I could see blisters forming on my left hand, red and white patches across the base of my thumb. I stood up and stepped back. The alarm stayed quiet. The ventilation markers still blinked green. I walked back to panel 12, grabbed my cart, and finished my shift. In the morning, Tyler filed a report. I saw him in the access corridor at 0615. Same high-vis jacket, same clipboard. He was talking to one of the technicians from the prep crew, the guy who'd been watching the ventilation marker 2 nights ago. They were standing near the checkpoint, looking at a tablet screen. When I walked past, Tyler looked up and told me to wait. The technician left. Tyler set the tablet on the desk near the checkpoint scanner and turned to face me. "Faulty latch," he said. "Thermal expansion during the ramp cycle caused the mechanism to disengage. Maintenance will replace it Monday." I didn't say anything. Tyler picked up his clipboard and made a note. "Jimmy Castro's been reassigned off-site for medical clearance and contract review. He'll finish out the week doing surface work in Building 40, then his contract ends." "Medical clearance," I said. "Standard procedure after a correction event. He's fine. Just can't work below ground anymore." I looked at the tablet on the desk. The screen showed a diagnostic graph with a single green line running flat across the display. No spikes, no irregularities. Tyler set his clipboard down. "You did what your father failed to do." I looked at him. "He wrote the rules," Tyler said. "Documented the cap, mapped the pressure cycles, figured out how the beam stabilizes the infrastructure. But when they tried to cycle in 84, he didn't break protocol. He followed procedure, waited for the ramp to finish, and the door opened anyway. Alain Roche walked into that corridor because your father thought the rules were enough by themselves." "And they're not," I said. "They're limits, not solutions. Sometimes you have to break one on purpose to make the system bite down harder." He paused. "You used a controlled rule break during the cycle. Gave the cap something to push against so it sealed tighter instead of slipping. That's what the punch was for. That's why it was there. I thought about the asset tag, recovered surface, 1911-1984. 15 days after it was issued. The punch stays," Tyler said. "Thermal damage fused it to the frame. Can't remove it without reopening the latch mechanism, and nobody's doing that." He picked up the tablet and his clipboard and walked toward the exit. I stood there for maybe a minute, then went to the locker room. I tried to resign on Monday. Typed up a 2-sentence email to Tyler and the contractor admin office saying I was terminating my agreement effective immediately and wouldn't be returning for any remaining shifts. Sent it at 14:30 from my apartment. At 16:05, someone knocked on my door. I opened it and found a woman in a crisp CERN security uniform standing in the hallway. She was maybe 37, dark blonde hair cut to a neat bob, blue-gray eyes. She had a radio clipped to her belt and a badge that read Nelson M. Security Operations. "Arlo Mercado," she said. Not a question. "Yeah." She pulled a tablet from under her arm and tapped the screen twice. "Your exit badge has been revoked due to operational assignment requirements. You've been issued a replacement with revised access parameters." She held out a new badge. It looked identical to my old one. Same red stripe, same photo, same name. But the text under the CERN logo was different. Where the old badge said, "Contractor, General Access," this one read, "Contractor, Night Operations Only." I didn't take it. Access is restricted to underground sectors 3, 4, and 7 between 2200 and 0600 hours, Nelson said. Surface access limited to locker rooms, cafeteria, and designated contractor corridors. Exit authorization requires shift supervisor approval. I resigned, I said. Your termination request was declined per operational necessity clause in your contract. Section 12, subsection 4. Night operations require continuous coverage, and replacement contractor availability is insufficient to meet current demand. She set the badge on the small table next to my door, then pulled a second sheet of paper from the tablet case and placed it next to the badge. Acknowledgement of revised access terms, she said. Sign and return to contractor admin within 24 hours. She turned and walked back down the hallway without waiting for a response. I stood in the doorway and looked at the new badge sitting on the table, nights only. I picked up the paper and read Section 12, subsection 4. It said CERN retained the right to extend or modify contractor assignments when operational requirements could not be met through standard staffing procedures, and that refusal to comply constituted breach of contract with financial penalties up to 15,000 francs. I didn't have 15,000 francs. I signed the paper. Tuesday night I went back underground, 2156. Descended the stairwell, scanned my new badge at the checkpoint. The scanner blinked green and I walked through the steel door into the tunnel. My cart was waiting in the alcove, inspection sheets already clipped to the handle, toolbox bungee corded to the bottom shelf. I checked my jacket pocket. The 5 rule sheet was still there, folded in half, edges worn from 2 weeks of handling. Never touch the stone door handle. Keep walking if you hear your name. Hold your breath when red lights blink twice. Don't record audio underground. Leave any missing tool you didn't lose exactly where it sits. I started pushing the cart east. At 22:30, I passed point 8. The side passage was dark and I didn't look down it, but I knew the copper punch was still there, fused to the frame, glowing dull red in my memory, even though it had cooled days ago. I kept walking. Panel 1 was in Sector 3, 40 meters ahead. I had 8 hours of work and a route I knew by heart. The tunnel hummed steady at 60 hertz. I got to Panel 1, opened the cover, and started my shift.